Mish!
Heya. This video is kind of a weird one. You see, despite my longevity in the hobby, I've been a little bit behind on the modern trends. There's a paint that I've long heard of, but I'd yet to get my hands on, this of course being the Pro Acryl series. I'd used some of their basing paints before, and honestly they're some of my favorites. But I'd never tried their basic acrylics. And today I'm getting a little taste of the series in the form of a very specific expansion box with a few colors I thought would complement it. But before we get into everything, I really humbly ask if you like, comment, and subscribe for more if you like what you see. If you're subscribed, please hit that little notification bell. I'd love for more of you guys to check out the main channel videos, and let's get into it. Let's go. Ninjons' addition to the line feels like the ultimate flesh painting kit. The colors are all ranging on the warmer side, and one of them is literally a flesh tone, and they all range from purples to reds. The other colors I would pick up were burnt red and mahogany. Now you're probably wondering, Mishmash, why did you go out with a niche expansion box rather than get the paints from the main line? Well, technically I am using a couple from the main line, but also, I don't know. I will say my first impression is I despise this bottle design. I'm told they're designed to keep the paints healthier for longer, but I feel like they're superfluous compared to a Vallejo bottle. I don't really like these Elmer's glue bottles, not one bit. I feel like every time I squeeze it, I can't get any paint to come out, and then when I try to close it, more paint comes out than I want. Not that this is a Herculean task, mind you, I just think it's a little silly in terms of design. So to start off simple, I'm starting with my KettleHelm guys. I prime my miniature using Vallejo German Panzer Gray. Side note, I love this primer. The first paint I'm going to be using is mahogany, and I think it's very apparent just how seamless this paint flows off the brush. I don't feel any resistance when using this paint. It flows very nicely, and there's really not a lot of streakiness, if any. The first thing that really stood out to me was just how long these paints stay wet for. Especially when blending the dark red with the mahogany, I felt like I could blend for hours. The paints will consistently flow through one another, creating really good mixtures. And on top of it, I'm using a cosmetic lamp to film all my videos, which emanates a lot of heat. This typically helps my paints dry faster, but this stuff just keeps going on. On the same coin too, it didn't feel like that it dried any slower or faster than any other paint that I used. It just felt like I could keep pushing it around without resistance, or causing one of those dry areas to chip away. I begin blending these colors just a little bit, sort of playing around with them and highlighting in my typical sketchy style. I've been kind of blending the mahogany with the burnt red, and I've worked my way up to the burnt red and pure. I do feel like burnt red might not be an apt description for this color, but maybe that's just because I've been using Vallejo's burnt red for so long. I don't even know why I mentioned this, I just thought I'd blab a little bit. Again, I really hate these bottles. It may very well be user error, but I just feel like a typical bottle would have just solved all these issues that I'm having. I'm not planning to transfer this to a regular bottle anytime soon, however, so maybe I should just keep quiet. Or I could complain. I prefer that option, but I don't want you to leave, so I guess I'll shut up. I have a friend that's really into the Pro Acryl series. And honestly, they're the biggest reason why I got pushed into the direction of trying these out. I've made some significant purchases for the channel recently, but I might have to just go ahead and pick up the full set. With how much I blend my paints, I feel like these would be a great addition to my painting arsenal. I'd keep highlighting with burnt red, but I would then introduce just a little bit of dark warm flesh to the color for brighter highlights. I find that the finish on these paints is very satiny so far, and I'm a big fan of this. I almost always varnish with satin varnish.
Some people just prefer to ignore this pretty little smile. Don't let them see me, this pretty little smile.
I'm really happy with the blend so far, but I really wanted to create texture with my typical feathery style. I like to scribble my highlights in a way that kind of creates a cluttered texture. This kind of giving more character and more of the vibe of a very unforgiving scene, or just a very unforgiving environment. And I don't really like calling this style grimdark, but let's face it, this character is absolutely grimdark. Creating these little micro details with a very sporadic painting style is always something that I really enjoy. It also kind of lends itself well for giving the cloth more of a realism to it. It looks beat, it looks dirty, but it's also kind of cartoony and it really fits the overall style of the miniature. I find these colors to be very versatile, being that I can blend them very easily but also adapt them to my painting style very quickly. I will say that this paint job was a rather abrupt test. I think if I gave it a little bit more thought I could do more, but for how quickly I got this done, I think it was worth it. I didn't use a single shade paint on this cloth, and I think it looks like actual cloth. I do feel like my placement of the colors could have been a little bit better, but I don't know, I'm not complaining too much. So it was a cool test, and I think it looks amazing, but the real test that I really want to try is flesh painting. I can't help but feel like this kit was designed to be a flesh painting kit. It kind of has everything that you could need. Now granted, this is just one test, but I can't help but feel that this is some of the best flesh I have ever painted. After a typical Zenithal Prime, I'd start this guy up by painting in the recesses and the shadows using the dark plum and a tiny bit of the magenta. The Zenithal Prime kind of allowed me to trace these areas, but once I introduced the dark warm flesh, I think this entire arm really came to life immediately. I will warn you now that this section is very tedious and it's a lot of repeating the same steps. We're basically building up these colors in layers. With each passing layer that we make, it gets stronger and stronger, but it also leaves a ghost of the previous layer. This leaves us with a very rich skin tone with a lot of character to it, featuring a lot of hidden colors and textures. Mixing these colors and continuously pushing forward while they're wet is key. I find that these colors give me a lot of freedom to keep going so long as the paint remains malleable. And I really haven't done this often, mind you. I'm decent at painting skin tones, but when it comes to this, I feel that these paints give me a lot more wiggle room for blending. Each of these colors interact with each other so well, and no one paint stands out with a bad balance or bad chemistry with one another. A big thing that I'm trying to do is introduce my shading colors on the lower half of this arm. Creating this nice sea of dark purple and magenta gives our dark warm flesh a great undertone to set upon. We'll kind of glaze these colors together over time, and we're going to be doing this over and over again. Best part is, all I'm using is water. As I build up the flesh tone on the top, I'm going to be introducing just a little bit of ivory to that flesh tone. This gives me a little bit more of a highlight on the sharpest edges, especially on the knuckles. I'd also like to apologize for how much I stumbled and struggled to keep this guy in frame. I ended up painting this guy after being unable to sleep, so my drunken master instincts kicked in, and I just kinda let this guy kinda go wherever he wanted. Like I previously mentioned, I'm very clearly redoing a lot of these steps over and over again to build up these colors. It seems pointless, but you can't argue with results. Hey, there may very well be a better method of pulling this off, but I really do feel like this skin tone looks amazing. And on top of it, this was so much fun to do. These colors blend together so well, and I feel like I could do this forever. Honestly, it was kinda hard to stop. I think another thing that I really like about these paints is that they're not particularly thick in pigment. Their coverage is incredibly strong for what it is, but I don't get any of those big chunks that I get with any other paint brand, at least so far. For the face, I've introduced more red colors to the mix. This allows a good strong undertone for the cheekbones and the nose to really pop out when highlighted. I didn't put as much attention to detail in the face as I did the arm, but I feel like I should keep going with this project. The only reason I'm leaving it here is the interest of time in getting this video out. Still, despite that, I think the face looks pretty incredible. There are definitely some parts that could use some work, and some additional shading could really go a long way. But I think these paints are pretty incredible for what they are. I do wish that I explored red gray and warm brown a little bit more in this video, but these guys make an appearance in the next painting video, so keep your eyes out for that. I initially just wanted this video to be a review on the painting set, but it kinda turned into an intensive blending video for flesh tone. I guess my final verdict on these paints thus far is that they're amazing paints with a lot of blending potential, with just really poor packaging. I hate these bottles, but they're better than the Citadel pots, so can't really complain too much. I've mentioned this before, but it's not really often that I get new paint. I've always been a guy that really likes blending his colors, and I like mixing things together to make my own stuff. Though that does come at a cost, considering that you can't exactly replicate everything unless you write it down. And God knows I don't write things down or prepare for things. There's not really much else I can really say about these paints other than what I can show you. I've given sort of a rundown on what I did for this blend, but overall, like I mentioned previously, I was half asleep when I painted this guy. So I think it's just good for you to just sit back and just see what these things are capable of. I'm by no means a blending expert, so if I can do this, I sure as hell believe that you can too. The biggest part is creating the texture along the arm while maintaining these colors. And again, that's just doing that same speckling method I mentioned earlier with the cloth. But that's about all the extent I have to say on method-wise, so if you don't mind, I think it's time we sit back, relax, and watch a little miniature painting. By all means, if you want to skip ahead to see the final result, go ahead, but I think it's worth taking a little peek at just how good these paints are. This episode was a little convoluted and it was kind of all over the place, but I thought it was a lot of fun to make. I think this paint set has a lot of potential, and I can certainly see the Pro Acryl series becoming a regular on the channel. But I think I've talked enough, and I think it's time that we wind things down for this video. And I'll remind you, if you liked what you saw, please leave a like, comment, and subscribe, it helps so much. And I'd like to mention one more thing before I go. I have a very, very, very special episode of Mishmash planned coming up soon. This next week's video is already filmed, but the one after that, I've got something very different for you guys, and I think you'll like it a lot. Without giving too much away, we're going to be going into a deep dive on an infamous and lost GW product. And I managed to get my hands on it. I'm not going to go into any further detail, mostly just to build the hype. So if you guys are excited to see that, let me know in the comments. After that video, we're going to be getting the Space Skaven video from that poll. There should be another poll out today, so you guys can vote on that. And I will leave you with a Mishmash kit bash and paint some fantastic miniatures. And you're gonna. I promise. See ya.